Captain Lee Daeho stood at the viewing window of the human ship Soul's Pride and watched the massive space station grow larger in front of them. The Galactic Federation station Omega-7 was bigger than any city on Earth, with lights that sparkled like stars against the dark metal hull. Strange alien ships moved around it like insects around a bright lamp. "First time seeing anything like this?" said Engineer Park Min-soo as he joined Lee at the window. Min-soo was a short man with oil-stained hands who could fix anything that broke. He had spent the last 3 days making sure their ship would not embarrass humanity in front of 12 different alien species. "Makes you feel small," replied Dr. Kim Sora from behind them. The xenobiologist carried 3 different recording devices and had not stopped taking notes since they left Earth. She was excited to meet aliens, but also nervous about saying the wrong thing. Communications Officer Choi Jae-min looked up from his station. "The Federation is giving us docking instructions. They want us to follow exactly what they tell us, or we might crash into something expensive." Jaemin was the youngest of the crew, but he spoke 7 Earth languages and had learned basic Federation standard in just 2 months. Lee nodded and took his captain's chair. "Take us in nice and easy. We want to make a good first impression." The docking process took 2 hours because the Federation had rules for everything. Every movement had to be approved by 3 different alien controllers. Every system had to be checked twice. Park Min-soo muttered under his breath that he could have parked the ship in half the time, but Lee told him to be patient. When they finally docked, a group of Federation officials waited for them in the airlock. The leader was a tall creature, made of what looked like living crystal. Its body caught the station lights and threw rainbows on the walls. 2 smaller beings that looked like giant insects flanked it, and behind them floated something that might have been made of pure energy. "Welcome to Federation Space," the crystal being said in perfect English. "I am Admiral Zeltaroth of the Velthari. We have calculated that this meeting has a 97.3% chance of success if we follow proper protocols." Lee stepped forward and extended his hand. "Captain Lee Daeho, representing Earth and humanity. We're honored to be here." Zeltaroth looked at the offered hand for several seconds before carefully extending what might have been an arm. The handshake was awkward but friendly. "Your species uses physical contact as a greeting gesture. We have studied this behavior and find it unusual, but not unpleasant." One of the insect beings spoke in a voice like buzzing bees. "We are the Malkrani. We speak as one voice because we think as one mind. Your species thinks as many minds. This will be interesting." The energy being pulsed brighter. "The Thoraxians welcome humanity. We have transcended physical form, but we remember when we had bodies like yours. You are very young, but you show promise." Dr. Sora stepped forward with her recording device. "This is incredible. 3 completely different evolutionary paths, and you all work together. How did you manage to form this federation?" "Very carefully," said Zeltaroth. "We spent 847 years negotiating the basic agreements. Every detail was calculated and recalculated until all possibilities for conflict were eliminated." Park Min-soo whistled softly. 847 years? We humans would have figured it out over lunch." The aliens made various sounds that their translators could not interpret. Zeltaroth's crystal body shifted colors. "Your species works at a different pace than ours. This is why we have prepared comprehensive safety protocols for your integration." A Makrani drone handed Lee a thick tablet. The screen showed a document with thousands of pages. "These are the standard procedures for all Federation activities. Study time is typically 6.7 Earth months for new species." Lee looked at the document and smiled. "This is very thorough. We'll take a look at it." "Take a look?" Zeltaroth's voice rose in pitch. "This document contains the accumulated wisdom of 12 species over thousands of years. It must be memorized completely before any human can participate in Federation activities." Choi Jae-min peered over Lee's shoulder at the tablet. "Captain, this is just the table of contents. The actual safety manual is 847 pages long." "We understand your concern," Lee said diplomatically. "Humans appreciate safety, but we also have experience with adapting to new situations quickly. The thoraxian pulsed a worried orange color. Adaptation without proper calculation leads to chaos. Chaos leads to destruction. We have seen this pattern in younger species. Dr. Sora pulled out her notebook. Could you tell me more about these younger species? What happened to them? The Zephyrians tried to explore a nebula without proper preparation, said a Mokrani. They were destroyed by gravitational anomalies. The Kethvar attempted to negotiate with hostile aliens using intuition instead of protocol, added Zeltaroth. The negotiations failed catastrophically. The Rillians engaged in what they called extreme sport. The Thoraxian said with a pulse of deep red. They no longer exist as a species. Park Min-soo looked confused. What are extreme sports? Doctor. Sora grinned. Activities humans do for fun that other species might consider dangerous, like mountain climbing, skydiving, or racing motorcycles. The aliens made alarmed sounds. Zeltaroth's crystals turned a pale blue. Your species does dangerous things for entertainment? Sure, said Choi Jaemin cheerfully. Just last year I went bungee jumping off a bridge. Scared me to death, but it was amazing. You deliberately placed yourself in a situation where death was possible. The Mokrani's buzzing grew higher and more agitated. Well, not really possible if you do it right, Park Min-soo explained. It's all about calculated risks. You check your equipment, you know your limits, and then you just go for it. Calculated risks? Zeltaroth leaned forward. Show us these. Calculations. Park Min-soo scratched his head. It's not really math calculations, it's more like you look at the situation and you feel whether it's doable or not. The silence that followed was deafening. The three alien species exchanged what were probably worried glances, though it was hard to tell with beings made of crystal, chitin, and energy. You make safety decisions based on feelings, the Thoraxian asked weakly. Experience and instinct, Lee corrected. Humans have survived on Earth for millions of years by making quick decisions with incomplete information. Dr. Sora pulled out another recording device. This is fascinating from an evolutionary perspective. You species appear to have developed completely different approaches to risk assessment. Your approach has kept your species alive, Zeltaroth admitted, but we have seen what happens to species that rely too heavily on instinct in the vast dangers of space. Maybe, said Lee, but we've also learned that sometimes you have to take chances if you want to accomplish something worthwhile. Park Min-soo nodded enthusiastically. That's when we have what we call a hold my beer moment. The translation systems of all three alien species made confused chirping sounds. Zeltaroth tilted its crystalline head. Hold your beer. We do not understand this reference. Choi. Jaemin laughed. It's hard to translate. It means the moment when someone sees an impossible situation and decides to try something crazy to fix it. You have a specific phrase for attempting impossible tasks? The Mokrani's buzzing reached a pitch that made the human's ears hurt. It usually works out, Dr. Sora said with a shrug. Humans are pretty good at making impossible things possible. The aliens looked at each other in what was clearly growing alarm. Zeltaroth spoke slowly, as if trying to explain something to children. Impossible means it cannot be done. This is a mathematical certainty. Maybe for you guys, Park Min-soo grinned, but humans don't always pay attention to math when there's work to be done. The Federation officials spent the next several minutes making various sounds of distress and conferring in languages the human translators could not handle. Finally, Zeltaroth turned back to the human delegation. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in a more controlled environment. We have prepared quarters for you and scheduled a series of orientation sessions. Sounds good, Lee agreed. We're looking forward to learning about the Federation. As the aliens led them through the station corridors, Dr. Sora noticed the way. Other beings stopped and stared at the human delegation. Word was already spreading through the station that the new species had some very unusual ideas about safety and risk. She made a note in her journal. First day of human-alien relations. Already clear that we think about problems very differently. This is either going to work out great or be a complete disaster. Behind her, she heard Park Min-soo telling Choi Jae-min about the time he fixed a broken reactor by hitting it with a wrench. The two alien escorts walking near them stumbled slightly when they heard this story. Dr. Sora smiled and made another note. Definitely going to be interesting. The emergency alarm woke Captain Lee Dae-ho from his first good sleep in a week. Red lights flashed in the human quarters on Station Omega 7, and the Federation's calm computer voice repeated the same message in 12 different languages. Lee rolled out of bed and grabbed his uniform while the translator in his room finally switched to English. All senior personnel report to Emergency Command Center immediately. This is a Class 1 galactic emergency. Lee found his crew already, gathering in the corridor. Dr. Kim Sora held her ever-present recording device and looked excited despite the early hour. Engineer Park Min-soo yawned and carried a coffee cup that steamed in the recycled air. Communications Officer Choi Jae-min was fully dressed and alert, probably because he never really slept when they were docked at alien stations. "Any idea what's happening?" Lee asked as they walked quickly through the station corridors. "The chatter on Federation channels is intense," Jaemin reported. "I'm picking up words like ancient weapon and system destruction, but the aliens are talking too fast for the translators to keep up." The Emergency Command Center was a massive circular room with holographic displays showing star maps and tactical information. Representatives from all 12 Federation species stood around a central display table, their various forms creating a bizarre collection of crystals, insects, energy beings, and stranger things that the humans had not met yet. Admiral Zeltaroth noticed the human delegation and gestured for them to approach. The Velthari's crystalline body was pulsing with urgent yellow light. "The situation is grave. An ancient predecessor weapon has activated in the shattered nebula." The central hologram showed a region of space that looked like someone had broken reality itself. Twisted streams of energy curved through gravitational anomalies while fragments of dead planets drifted in impossible orbits. In the center of this chaos, a dark object pulsed with malevolent red light. "The weapon will reach full power in 72 hours, continued Zeltaroth. "When that happens, it will create an expanding wave of destruction that will sterilize 3 star systems. Billions of sentient beings will die." Dr. Sora stepped closer to the display. "What kind of weapon can destroy multiple star systems?" New alien spoke, something that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. "The predecessors built technologies we barely understand. This particular device appears to manipulate fundamental forces of physics. It can unmake matter at the subatomic level." Park Min-soo whistled softly. "That's a pretty serious problem. What's the evacuation plan?" The command center fell silent. Every alien species turned to look at the humans with expressions that ranged from confusion to pity. A Macrani drone buzzed forward. "Evacuation is impossible. The affected systems contain 47 billion sentient beings across 23 worlds. Our largest evacuation fleet could move perhaps 10 million beings in 72 hours. So we need to shut down the weapon," Lee said simply. Another wave of silence swept through the room. Zeltaroth's crystals shifted to a deep blue color that the humans had learned meant distress. "The weapon is located in the shattered nebula. No Federation ship has successfully navigated those spatial anomalies in over 2,000 years. The gravitational fields alone would crush any vessel. The temporal distortions would age a crew to dust before they could reach the device." The tree-like alien's many eyes blinked in sequence. "We have run 847,293 different approach scenarios through our most advanced computers. Every simulation ends in total mission failure and crew death. The mathematics are absolute," added a Thoraxian, its energy form pulsing pale white. "Approaching the weapon is impossible under current physics." The Federation command staff began discussing evacuation priorities and damage mitigation strategies. Different species argued about which populations should be saved first and how to preserve essential knowledge before the destruction wave hit. Their voices created a chaotic symphony of clicks, buzzes, harmonic tones, and translated speech. Park Min-soo pulled out a handheld device and started studying the tactical display. He zoomed in on different sections of the nebula, traced the gravitational field patterns with his finger, and made quiet humming sounds while he thought. After exactly 12 minutes, Park stood up and walked to the center of the command room. "Excuse me," he said in a voice that somehow carried over all the alien discussion. "This mission is impossible according to your calculations, right?" Every alien in the room turned to stare at the human engineer. Zeltaroth spoke for all of them. "Completely impossible. The probability of success is so small that our computers register it as 0. Park Min-soo grinned and looked back at his human crewmates. "Choi Jae-min, hold my beer." The phrase hit the translation systems like a brick wall. Every alien's translator made confused beeping sounds. Several species started rapid conversations in their native languages, trying to understand what the human had said. Jae-min automatically reached out to take Park's coffee cup even though he knew what was coming next. Dr. So-ra pulled out her recording device and started documenting what she suspected would be a historic moment. Captain Lee stepped forward. "What my engineer is trying to say is that we volunteer for the mission." The command center erupted in chaos. Aliens made sounds of alarm, confusion, and what might have been grief. Zeltaroth's crystalline form turned bright red. "You cannot volunteer for certain death," the Admiral said. "We forbid it under Federation safety protocols." "With respect, Admiral," Lee replied calmly. "We appreciate your concern for our safety, but humans have experience with situations that look impossible from the outside." Dr. So-ra moved closer to the tactical display and started taking detailed recordings. "From an anthropological perspective, this is fascinating. You've calculated that the mission cannot succeed using established methods." "Correct," buzzed a Macrani. "No known technology can survive passage through the shattered nebula." "But you're thinking like aliens," Park Min-soo said cheerfully. He was now pulling tools from his kit and examining the holographic display like it was a broken machine he needed to fix. Sometimes the trick isn't to survive something. Sometimes you have to use the thing that's trying to kill you. The tree-like alien's many eyes focused on Park with laser intensity. "Explain this concept." Park pointed at the swirling energy streams in the nebula display. "Look at these gravitational anomalies. You see them as obstacles. I see them as a navigation system." "Navigation?" Zeltaroth's voice rose several octaves. "Those fields would crush your ship into subatomic particles." "Only if we fight them," Park explained. He was now sketching modifications on his handheld device. "But what if we ride them instead, like surfing a wave?" "Surfing?" The translator system struggled with another human concept. Choi Jae-min tried to help. "It's when humans use ocean waves to move across water. You don't fight the wave. You use its power to go where you want to go." The aliens looked at each other with expressions of growing horror. A thoraxian pulsed deep orange. "You want to modify your ship to be crushed by gravitational forces in a controlled manner?" "More like modified to use those forces as propulsion," Park corrected. He showed his sketches to Dr. So-ra, who nodded enthusiastically. "The nebula's energy wants to move in specific patterns. We just need to make our ship move the same way." "This violates every principle of safe spaceship design," stated a Macrani. "Sure," Park agreed happily. "That's what makes it possible." Dr. So-ra looked up from her recordings. "He's right from a theoretical standpoint. You've been trying to overcome the nebula's forces, but if you work with them instead, you could theoretically navigate using the chaos itself," finished Captain Lee. "It's not safe by any standard definition, but it might be possible." The Federation command staff spent several minutes in heated discussion. Every species seemed to have strong opinions about human sanity. Finally, Zeltaroth approached the human delegation. "Even if your modifications could work, which our calculations suggest they cannot, the radiation levels in the nebula would kill you long before you reach the weapon." Park Min-soo looked thoughtful. "What kind of radiation are we talking about?" "Exotic particles that break down molecular bonds," replied the tree-like being. "No known shielding can protect against them for more than a few minutes." "Known shielding," Park repeated. "But what about unknown shielding?" He was already pulling up ship schematics on his device and making notes. "So-ra, remember that weird energy field we detected around the Earth's moon last month?" Dr. Sora's eyes went wide. The one that shouldn't exist according to physics? The field that somehow repels cosmic radiation? That's the one, Park grinned. I've been wondering how to replicate it. Looks like we just found a practical application. The aliens watched in fascination and terror as the humans started planning modifications that violated everything they knew about space travel. Park sketched engine upgrades that used controlled explosions for propulsion. Dr. Sora calculated radiation shielding based on phenomena that alien science claimed were impossible. Captain Lee studied the mission timeline. We'll need to leave within 6 hours to reach the nebula with enough time to navigate to the weapon. 6 hours? Zeltaroth's crystalline body flickered between several colors rapidly. It takes our engineers 6 months to approve basic modifications. Human engineering works differently. Choi Jae-min explained. We test as we go. Test as you go? A thoraxian pulsed whetted the modified human ship Soul's Pride looked like something that had been built by someone who had never seen a proper spacecraft before. Engineer Park Min-soo had welded extra engine pods to the hull using spare parts from the station's maintenance bays. Strange energy collectors stuck out from the sides like metal wings, and the whole thing hummed with barely controlled power. Federation Command, this is Soul's Pride requesting departure clearance, said Communications Officer Choi Jae-min into his headset. He was trying to sound professional while sitting next to a jury-rigged control panel that sparked every few seconds. Soul's Pride, you are cleared for departure, came Admiral Zeltaroth's voice over the comm system. The Veltari sounded like someone announcing a funeral. May your atoms find peace in the void. Captain Lee Dae-ho looked back at his crew from the pilot's seat. Dr. Kim So-ra was strapped into a chair surrounded by recording equipment and looking excited despite the fact that they were about to attempt something that 12 advanced alien civilizations considered suicide. Park Min-soo was making last-minute adjustments to the engine controls while humming an old Korean song. Everyone ready? Lee asked. Ship systems are as ready as they're going to get, reported Park. The engines are running at 200% of normal capacity and the radiation shields are powered by that weird energy field thing we figured out. If the math is wrong, we'll know pretty quickly. I've got recorders running on everything, said Dr. So-ra. If we survive this, the scientific data will be invaluable. If we don't survive, maybe someone will find the recordings and learn something useful. Choi Jae-min switched his comm system to broadcast on all Federation frequencies. This is Soul's Pride beginning our approach to the Shattered Nebula. We're going to try something new. The nebula filled their view screen like a wall of twisted space and impossibly bright energy streams. Gravitational anomalies bent light into spirals and fragments of dead worlds spun in orbits that defied physics. At the center of the chaos, barely visible through the distortions, the ancient weapon pulsed with red light. Lee engaged the engines and felt the ship leap forward with enough acceleration to crush a normal crew. The humans had spent 2 hours in the station's medical bay getting injected with stimulants and protective drugs that the Federation doctors swore would probably kill them. Entering the nebula's outer boundary, Lee announced. The first gravitational wave hit them like a giant, invisible hand trying to squeeze the ship into paste. Normal shields would have failed instantly, but Park's modifications channeled the crushing force into the engine systems. Instead of being destroyed, Soul's Pride used the gravity to accelerate even faster. Holy mother of... Park started to say before a second wave hit them and sent the ship spinning sideways through a field of exotic radiation. Dr. So-ra watched her instruments register energy levels that shouldn't exist. The radiation is incredible, but our shields are holding. Whatever that energy field effect is, it's actually working. Lee fought to control their flight path as streams of twisted spacetime tried to pull them in 17 different directions at once. A normal pilot would have lost control in seconds, but Lee had learned to fly in Earth's atmosphere, where wind and weather could change without warning. Park, I need more power to the maneuvering thrusters, he called out. You've got it, Park replied, then hit something with a wrench. The ship's engines roared louder, and suddenly they had enough thrust to fight a gravity well that was trying to turn them inside out. Communications Officer Choi Jae-min was monitoring Federation channels, while also running what he called appropriate music for impossible missions through the ship's speakers. The combination of alien emergency broadcasts and upbeat Earth music created a surreal soundtrack for their flight through space that was actively trying to kill them. Federation Command is losing their minds, Jamin reported with a grin. I'm getting about 50 different requests to abort the mission and return immediately. Tell them we're having too much fun to turn around now, said Park, as he rerouted power from life support to the engines. Besides, we're already past the point where normal ships would have been destroyed. A massive gravitational anomaly loomed ahead of them, a twisting spiral of space that led deeper into the nebula. Lee studied it for about 10 seconds before making a decision that would have horrified any sane pilot. We're going into the spiral, he announced. Into it? Dr. Sora looked up from her instruments. Not around it? The energy patterns show that's where the current wants to take us, Lee explained as he adjusted their trajectory. If we fight it, we'll use up all our power. If we ride it, it'll carry us exactly where we need to go. The ship entered the gravitational spiral and immediately started spinning like a bullet fired from a rifle. The humans were pressed back into their seats by forces that should have knocked them unconscious, but the medical drugs they'd taken kept them alert and functional. This is either brilliant or completely insane, shouted Dr. Sora over the roar of overstressed engines. Why not both? Park shouted back while making more adjustments to systems that were operating far beyond their designed limits. The spiral carried them deeper into the nebula, past broken moons and through clouds of particles that glowed with their own light. Their speed increased until they were moving faster than any Federation ship had ever traveled inside a gravity well. Captain Lee ate a sandwich while piloting through a maze of space-time distortions, claiming that he always flew better when he was relaxed. The sight of their captain calmly eating lunch while reality bent around them actually helped the crew stay calm. Soul's Pride, this is Federation Command, came Admiral Zelteroth's voice over the comm system. The signal was distorted by the nebula's interference, but the panic in the alien's voice came through clearly. Your ship's position is impossible according to our tracking systems. We're getting close to the weapon, Choi Jamin replied. The gravitational currents are carrying us right toward it. How are you still alive? Asked a different voice, probably one of the Thoraxians. Our calculations show you should have been destroyed 17 minutes ago. Dr. Sora checked her readings. The radiation levels out here are off the charts, but our shielding is working perfectly. We're also collecting energy from the nebula itself to power our systems. Collecting energy from the nebula? The Federation voices rose in pitch. That should be impossible. It would be impossible if we were trying to do it safely, Park explained while hitting another system with his wrench. But since we're already doing something completely insane, adding a little energy collection just makes sense. A new gravitational wave caught them and flung Soul's Pride toward a cluster of debris from some ancient battle. Instead of trying to avoid the wreckage, Lee used it as a navigation aid, bouncing their ship off the gravity shadows of destroyed vessels to change direction. Contact, announced Dr. Sora, pointing at her sensors. I'm detecting the weapon, it's huge. The ancient predecessor device came into view through the swirling chaos of the nebula like a metal moon covered in dark spires. Energy patterns crawled across its surface like living lightning, and the space around it was filled with defensive drones that had been waiting millions of years for someone to approach. Defense systems are activating, reported Choi Jamin. I count at least 100 autonomous weapons platforms. The drones moved toward Soul's Pride with mechanical precision. Each one was the size of a small building and armed with weapons that could punch holes in reality itself. Under normal circumstances, a single Federation cruiser would need an entire battle fleet to fight so many defenders. Park Min-soo looked at the approaching swarm of ancient death machines and grinned. Sora, hold my beer. Dr. Sora automatically reached for his coffee cup while Park started making modifications to their engines that involved removing several important-looking safety components. What are you doing? She asked. Something the predecessors won't expect, Park replied as he bypassed the engine regulators entirely. They built these defenses to stop ships that follow normal physics. Captain Lee understood immediately. But we're not following normal physics anymore. Exactly, Park confirmed. then engaged the modified engines. Soul's Pride didn't accelerate so much as it exploded forward, using the nebula's own chaotic energy as fuel. They moved so fast that the ancient targeting systems couldn't track them properly. The defensive drones fired at where the human ship had been, not where it was going. Lee piloted through the swarm of confused weapons like he was threading a needle while riding a rocket. The drones tried to adjust their firing patterns, but they had been programmed to fight enemies who obeyed the normal rules of space combat. "This is incredible," Dr. Sora said, recording everything while being thrown around in her seat. "We're using unpredictability as a defensive system." "The predecessors were probably very logical," said Choi Jae-min as he dodged a falling panel that had shaken loose from the ceiling. "They wouldn't understand pilots who make decisions based on instinct." A massive defense platform turned toward them, charging weapons that could destroy a planet. Lee took one look at it and made another decision that violated every rule of sensible space combat. The airlock of the ancient predecessor weapon hissed open to reveal corridors that stretched into darkness. The air inside was stale but breathable, filled with the hum of machinery that had been running for millions of years without maintenance. Emergency lighting flickered along the walls, casting strange shadows that danced as the humans stepped inside. "Atmosphere is good," reported Dr. Kim Sora, checking her scanner. "Gravity is about Earth normal. Temperature is comfortable. It's like this place was designed for beings our size." Engineer Park Min-soo carried a toolkit that contained everything from advanced diagnostic equipment to a hammer he had borrowed from the Federation Station's maintenance bay. "The predecessors built things to last. Look at these walls. They're still perfect after all this time." Communications Officer Choi Jae-min stayed close to their ship's airlock, maintaining contact with Federation Command. "The aliens are still freaking out about us being here. Admiral Zeltaroth keeps asking for status updates every 30 seconds. Captain Lee Dae-ho led the way down the corridor with a handheld light that revealed construction beyond anything the Federation had ever achieved. The walls were made of materials that seemed to absorb and reflect light at the same time, and control panels showed symbols that hurt to look at directly. "The weapon core should be at the center of the structure," Lee said, consulting the layout they had mapped during their approach. "If we're going to shut this thing down, that's where we need to go." The corridors branched and connected in patterns that seemed almost organic, like they were walking through the nervous system of some massive creature. Their footsteps echoed strangely, creating harmonics that suggested the entire weapon was designed to resonate at specific frequencies. "Motion sensors," warned Dr. Sora as her scanner detected movement ahead. "Something big is coming our way." The defense drones that emerged from hidden panels were different from the ones they had fought in space. These were sleek, fast, and designed for close combat in narrow corridors. Red energy fields crackled along their surfaces as they moved toward the human intruders. "Spread out," ordered Lee, but the hallway was too narrow for proper tactical movement. The first drone reached them in seconds, energy weapons charging for a killing shot. Instead of running or trying to find cover, Communications Officer Choi Jae-min did something that made perfect sense to humans, but would have baffled any Federation strategist. He started running toward it. "Jae-min, hold my beer," he called back to Dr. Sora, tossing her his emergency rations while sliding under the drone's energy blast at the last possible second. The ancient machine tried to track his movement, but its programming had been designed for enemies who fought logically. It could not calculate the trajectory of someone who was improvising based on split-second decisions and adrenaline. Captain Lee understood immediately and joined the attack. Instead of running away from the drones, the humans ran past them, between them and around them. The defense systems fired repeatedly but kept hitting empty air or each other. "They're programmed for conventional tactics," Lee shouted while vaulting over a drone that was trying to track his movement. "Keep moving and stay unpredictable." Dr. Sora followed the group while recording everything on her scanner. From a scientific perspective, she was witnessing something unprecedented. Humans using their evolutionary advantages against technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything on Earth. "We're persistence hunters," she called out as they reached a junction where the corridor opened into a vast chamber. "We evolved to chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion." The defense drones tried to follow them into the chamber, but seemed confused by the larger space. Their targeting systems had been calibrated for the narrow corridors, and they could not adapt quickly to the changed environment. Park Min-soo took one look at the frustrated machines and pulled out his diagnostic scanner. These things are really sophisticated, but they're also really old. I bet their programming hasn't been updated in a few million years. Can you shut them down? Asked Lee. Maybe, Park replied, studying the energy patterns emanating from the drones. Their control systems are using protocols that predate everything the Federation knows about computing. But electronic systems are electronic systems no matter who built them. He approached the nearest drone, which was spinning in place trying to decide which human to target first. Instead of shooting it or trying to avoid it, Park did something that would have horrified any Federation engineer. He opened his toolkit and started taking the drone apart while it was still active. Park, what are you doing? Dr. Sora asked, backing away from the dangerous ancient technology. Percussive maintenance, Park replied cheerfully. He had removed an access panel and was now examining the drone's internal systems with the same expression he used when fixing broken coffee makers. Sometimes when something isn't working right, you just need to adjust a few connections. The drone made confused beeping sounds as Park disconnected several components and rearranged others. After about 2 minutes of work, it stopped trying to kill them, and instead began following Park around like a friendly pet. How did you do that? Choi Jae-min asked, staring at the now docile war machine. I changed its primary directive from destroy intruders to assist maintenance personnel, Park explained. The predecessors probably had repair teams working in here, so the override protocols were already in the system. Dr. Sora held up her recorder to capture this moment for science. You reprogrammed a million-year-old alien defense system in 2 minutes using basic electronic repair techniques? It's all just circuits and logic gates when you get down to the basics, Park said with a shrug. Doesn't matter if it was built by humans or predecessors, electricity works the same way. The other drones in the chamber had stopped their attack patterns and were now approaching Park with what might have been curiosity. Within 10 minutes, he had converted the entire defense system from a threat into an escort service. Federation Command is going to have a collective nervous breakdown when they hear about this, said Choi Jae-min. The reprogrammed drones led them deeper into the weapon, through chambers filled with technology that defied understanding. Energy flowed through crystalline conduits in patterns that created music when the harmonics aligned. Computing systems processed information using methods that turned mathematics into art. The core chamber should be just ahead, Lee announced, as they approached a massive doorway marked with warning symbols in a dozen different ancient languages. The doors opened to reveal a space that took their breath away. The weapon's core was a sphere of pure energy suspended in a framework of impossible materials. Power flowed into it from every direction, building toward a moment when it would unleash destruction across multiple star systems. Countdown displays showed the time remaining, 47 minutes until full activation. This is incredible, Dr. Sora whispered, recording everything while trying to understand technology that was beyond current galactic science. The energy patterns alone will revolutionize physics. Park Min-soo studied the core chamber with the same methodical approach he used for any other engineering problem. He walked around the energy sphere, examined the control systems, and tested various components with his diagnostic equipment. It's actually not that complicated, he announced after 5 minutes of investigation. It's just really, really big. Captain Lee looked at the massive display screens showing power levels that could crack planets. Can you shut it down? The Gi. Proper shutdown sequence would take hours to decode, Park admitted. The predecessors wrote their technical manuals in mathematical poetry. But the thing is, every machine has basic operating principles. He pointed at the energy sphere with his wrench. This thing is basically a really advanced power generator that's been overcharged. The buildup is happening because the safety systems aren't working right. Safety systems? Choi Jae-min looked around at a weapon designed to destroy star systems. This thing has safety systems? Everything has safety systems, Park replied confidently. Even weapons of mass destruction need to be maintained and controlled. The predecessors wouldn't build something that could accidentally destroy their Own civilization. Dr. Sora checked her readings. The safety systems appear to have failed about 3 weeks ago. That's what triggered the activation sequence. Park nodded and approached the core's control panel. The symbols and displays were incomprehensible to Federation science, but he studied them with the focused attention of someone who had spent his life making broken things work again. "I think I see the problem," he said after examining several different systems. "The primary regulator is stuck in a feedback loop. It's trying to shut down, but it can't complete the sequence because another system is overriding it." "Can you fix it?" asked Lee. Park looked at the ancient controls, then at his toolkit, then back at the controls. The technical solution would require understanding predecessor engineering principles that we don't have time to learn. He pulled out his hammer and hefted it thoughtfully. But sometimes the best engineering solution is the simplest one. Dr. Sora backed away from the core chamber. "Park, please tell me you're not thinking about hitting a weapon that can destroy solar systems." "Not hitting," Park corrected. "Percussive calibration. There's a difference." He had located what 6 months after the Shattered Nebula incident, the story had spread to every corner of the galaxy. In bars on frontier worlds, alien traders told versions where the humans had fought 1,000 ancient drones with nothing but hand tools. In Federation academies, professors used the mission as an example of successful crisis resolution, despite impossible odds. On the peaceful worlds of the core systems, parents told their children bedtime stories about brave humans who saved entire civilizations with something called "hold my beer" moments. Dr. Kim So-Ra sat in her new office at the Federation Science Institute reviewing the final draft of her research paper. The xenobiologist had been promoted 3 times since returning from the predecessor weapon, and her work on human risk assessment and the paradox of successful impossibility was required reading at every Federation university. "The fundamental difference," she wrote, "lies not in humans' willingness to take risks but in their intuitive understanding of which risks are worth taking. While Federation species calculate probability matrices before acting, humans appear to process multiple variables subconsciously and make decisions based on pattern recognition developed over millions of years of evolutionary pressure." Her comm system chimed with an incoming message from engineer Park Min-soo. Since the incident, Park had become the most requested consultant in known space, traveling between star systems to solve problems that had stumped alien engineers for decades. "Sora, you'll love this," his message began. "The hegemony of Kaz had a power grid that hadn't worked properly in 50 years. Their best engineers spent 6 months trying to fix it with quantum field harmonics and probability wave adjustments. I found a loose connection and tightened it with a screwdriver. The whole planet's lights came back on. They're calling it the miracle of basic maintenance." Dr. Sora smiled and made a note in her research journal. Park's success rate with impossible problems was now approaching 90%, not because he was smarter than Federation engineers, but because he approached each situation with the assumption that there was always a practical solution if you looked hard enough. Across the galaxy, communications officer Choi Jae-min had accidentally started a cultural revolution. His habit of playing appropriate music during dangerous missions had been adopted by young aliens throughout the Federation. The concept of getting pumped up before attempting difficult tasks was spreading faster than the finest Federation. Scholars could study it. "Music appears to synchronize neural activity and enhance performance under stress," reported a Thoraxian research team. "The human practice of playing motivational audio during crisis situations shows measurable benefits. Across multiple species, alien teenagers now listen to Earth music before taking exams. Federation military units had started playing combat songs during training exercises. The galaxy's first extreme sports league had been founded on the moon of Kepler 438c, with participants from 6 different species attempting activities that their parents considered insanely dangerous. The humans have introduced us to the concept of fun risk," explained a young Veltari, who had recently taken up something called rock climbing. "It is the practice of putting oneself in danger for the purpose of overcoming that danger through skill and determination." Captain Lee Dae-ho, now Admiral Lee Dae-ho, stood in the Federation Command Center looking at a new crisis that had developed in the Outer Rim. A rogue star was threatening to collapse into a black hole near 3 populated systems. The assembled alien commanders had spent 4 hours discussing evacuation procedures and calculating loss minimization strategies. "The mathematics are clear," announced Admiral Zeltaroth, whose crystalline form had taken on the deep blue color that indicated stress. "We can evacuate perhaps 60% of the affected populations before the stellar collapse creates an event horizon. 40% casualties," added a Macrani representative, its buzzing voice higher than usual. 23.7 million sentient beings will be lost." The Thoraxian delegate pulsed pale orange. "We have run every possible scenario through our most advanced computers. There is no way to prevent the stellar collapse using known physics." Admiral Lee studied the tactical displays showing the dying star and the nearby inhabited systems. The star was already past the point where normal stellar engineering could stabilize it. Every Federation computer agreed that collapse was inevitable within 72 hours. "Unknown physics," Lee said thoughtfully. The alien commanders turned to look at him. Over the past 6 months, they had learned that when a human leader used that tone of voice, something unprecedented was about to happen. "Admiral," said Zeltaroth carefully, "are you suggesting that humans have a solution for preventing stellar collapse?" Lee looked around at the assembled Federation leadership. Representatives from 12 species, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, all staring at him with expressions that mixed hope and terror. "I'm suggesting that my people have experience with problems that look impossible from the outside," Lee replied. "Give me a few minutes to talk to my team." He activated his personal communicator and contacted the other members of the original Soul's Pride crew. "Park, Sora, Jamin, we've got another situation that the Federation computers say can't be solved." "What kind of situation?" came Park Minsu's voice from halfway across the galaxy. "Dying star, imminent black hole formation, 23 million people about to become casualties." There was a brief pause before Park responded with barely contained excitement. "A whole star? That's a much more interesting engineering challenge than anything I've worked on lately." Dr. Sora's voice joined the conversation from her research institute. "From a scientific perspective, stellar collapse involves some fascinating physics. The energy requirements for stabilization would be enormous. But if you could find a way to redirect the gravitational forces..." "I'm already pulling up stellar engineering databases," added Choi Jae-min from his cultural exchange posting. "This is going to require some serious coordination between multiple ships and probably some really good music." Admiral Lee looked back at the Federation commanders, who were listening to this conversation with growing amazement. "How long before you can get to the crisis zone?" 6 hours if I push the engines past their safety limits," reported Park. 4 hours if I commandeer a Federation research vessel," said Dr. Sora. 3 hours if I borrow one of those new experimental ships the Thoraxians have been working on," added Jamin. Lee nodded and turned back to the alien leadership. "My team will rendezvous at the crisis site in 6 hours. We'll need full sensor, data on the dying star, and complete tactical control of any ships in the area." "Admiral Lee," Zeltaroth's crystalline body was shifting through colors rapidly. "You cannot prevent a stellar collapse. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of 100 fusion reactors." "You're probably right," Lee agreed. "According to everything the Federation knows about stellar physics, what we're planning is impossible." He paused and looked around the command center at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. "Park, Sora, Jamin," he said into his communicator. "This looks impossible according to standard procedures." The response came immediately from all 3 of his teammates. "Hold our beer, Federation. We've got this." The alien commanders watched in fascination and terror as Admiral Lee began coordinating a mission that violated every principle of safe space operations. Within minutes, human ships were racing toward the crisis zone at speeds that shouldn't have been possible, carrying equipment that had been modified in ways that made Federation engineers file formal complaints, preparing to attempt something that their computers insisted could not be done. "This is either going to be the greatest rescue in galactic history," observed a Thoraxian delegate, "or the most spectacular failure ever recorded." Dr. Sora's voice came over the comm system from her borrowed research vessel. "From an anthropological perspective, those two outcomes aren't mutually exclusive. Humans have a long history of turning spectacular failures into unexpected successes. Admiral Zeltaroth spent several minutes consulting with representatives from other Federation worlds before approaching Admiral Lee again. The affected systems are requesting permission to broadcast this mission on all public networks. If you succeed, it will be witnessed by billions of beings across the galaxy. And if we fail? Lee asked. Then at least they'll know someone tried. The impossible rather than accepting defeat. Lee smiled and activated the ship-wide comm system. This is Admiral Lee to all human vessels. We're about to attempt something that every computer in the galaxy says can't be done. In front of an audience of billions, with equipment that probably shouldn't work, using methods that violate most known laws of physics. Park Min-soo's voice came back over the channel, cheerful and confident. Sounds like a Tuesday, let's go save some star systems. As the human ships accelerated toward their impossible mission, the Federation broadcast networks carried the story to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Aliens gathered around viewing screens to watch four humans attempt to prevent stellar collapse using nothing but ingenuity, determination, and what the galaxy had, Leah.